The painting was worth millions, but the woman who created it was sitting on a piece of cardboard beside a crowded city sidewalk, counting coins in the freezing wind. She had spent 3 days without selling a single painting, and that evening she had only enough money for a small loaf of bread. Then a black luxury car stopped directly in front of her. A man stepped out wearing an expensive charcoal suit, looked at the paintings scattered around her, and asked a question that would change her life forever. How much for all of them? She thought he was joking. He wasn't. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can give someone a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the person we almost walk past is carrying a gift the world desperately needs. Her name was Elena, and at 29 years old, she had learned how to survive without expecting anyone to save her. Every morning before the city became crowded, she carried a battered canvas bag down 6 flights of stairs in the tiny apartment building where she rented a room. Inside that bag were brushes with worn handles, small tubes of paint, several sheets of inexpensive canvas, a bottle of water, and a folded photograph she never showed anyone. She would take the subway downtown, find a place near the old train station where pedestrians moved quickly enough to create customers but slowly enough to notice her work, and arrange her paintings against the concrete wall. Some days she sold 2 or 3. Other days she sold nothing. The paintings were beautiful. They showed lonely streets after rain, old couples sitting together on park benches, children chasing pigeons, tired workers waiting for buses, mothers holding sleeping babies, and quiet corners of the city that most people never noticed. Elena had a strange ability to paint ordinary moments in a way that made them feel important. A cracked window looked like a memory. A homeless man's hands looked like a lifetime of work. A child's face could make an entire gray street feel alive. But beauty did not always pay the rent. 3 years earlier, Elena had been studying at a respected art academy on a scholarship. Her teachers had told her she had extraordinary talent. One professor had even predicted that galleries would eventually compete for her work. But life had interrupted those dreams when her mother became seriously ill. Elena left school, returned home, and spent nearly every savings she had on medicines and hospital bills. After her mother passed away, the apartment was gone, the scholarship was gone, and the future she had imagined seemed to disappear with her. She had no influential family, no wealthy friends, no gallery owner waiting to discover her. So she painted on the street. And every painting she sold became food, rent, transportation, or another day of survival. That particular Thursday had been especially cruel. Rain had started before noon and continued for hours. Elena had covered her paintings with plastic sheets and waited beneath the narrow awning of a closed shop. People hurried past with umbrellas, barely looking at her. By evening, her fingers were stiff from the cold. She finally uncovered one small painting and stared at it. It showed an elderly man sitting alone on a bench beneath a tree, holding a second cup of coffee that no one was coming to drink. Elena had painted it after seeing an old man do exactly that. She had priced it at $40. Nobody bought it. She sighed, packed her brushes, and began stacking her paintings when a polished black car pulled up beside the curb. The driver opened the rear door. A tall man in his early 40s stepped out. His name was Adrian Cole, although Elena didn't know that yet. Almost everyone in the city knew his name. He was the founder of one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies, a millionaire whose face occasionally appeared on business magazines. He owned luxury properties, traveled with assistants, attended charity events, and was known for making enormous investments. But that evening he wasn't thinking about business. He had just left the hospital. His younger sister had been there for treatment, and the visit had left him emotionally exhausted. He had asked his driver to take the long way home because he didn't want to return to his empty penthouse yet. Then he saw Elena's paintings. The car stopped. Adrian stepped toward the wall and studied every painting without saying anything. Elena became uncomfortable. She was used to people looking for a few seconds before walking away. Instead, the wealthy stranger stood there for nearly 10 minutes, Finally, he pointed toward the paintings and asked how much she wanted for all of them. Elena hesitated. She thought he wanted to bargain. She gave him a number that was low enough to ensure he wouldn't walk away. Adrian looked at her, and then at the paintings. He offered 10 times more. Elena stared at him, convinced she had misunderstood. But Adrian wasn't finished. He told her he didn't want the paintings for his house. He wanted to make her an offer. A job. A studio. A monthly salary. And complete freedom to paint. Elena's first reaction wasn't happiness. It was suspicion. She had lived long enough without security to know that extraordinary offers often came with extraordinary conditions. She asked what he wanted in return. Adrian answered that he wanted her to paint. Nothing else. Elena refused. Not because she didn't need the money, but because she couldn't understand why a millionaire would care about a street artist. Adrian didn't argue. Instead, he asked her to keep the offer for 7 days. Then he bought the lonely old man's painting for far more than she had asked. He got back into his car and disappeared into the traffic. Elena stood there holding the money, watching the red tail lights vanish. For the first time in years, she had enough to breathe. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something about the encounter wasn't ordinary. The next morning, she returned to the same street. Adrian was there. Not in his luxury car this time. He arrived alone. He stood several feet away and watched her paint. For hours. He didn't interrupt. He didn't take photographs. He simply watched. Eventually Elena asked why. Adrian told her that his mother had once painted. Elena stopped. His mother had been an artist who spent years creating paintings that nobody wanted to buy. She had eventually stopped painting after Adrian's father died. Adrian remembered watching her slowly lose the one thing that had once made her happy. He said Elena's work reminded him of her. That explanation changed something. For the first time, Elena saw not a millionaire standing in front of her, but a son carrying an old memory. Still, she didn't accept immediately. She asked for proof that the offer was real. Adrian gave her the address of an abandoned warehouse his company owned near the river. He told her to visit it. When Elena arrived that afternoon, she expected an empty building. Instead, she found a massive renovated studio filled with natural light, unfinished walls, wooden floors, storage shelves, easels, paints, and dozens of blank canvases. There was even a small kitchen. On one wall hung a framed photograph of Adrian's mother. Elena recognized the expression immediately. It was the same expression she had seen in her own mother's eyes whenever she talked about art. For the first time, Elena cried. Not because she was sad. Because someone had finally created a place where she could stop surviving long enough to create. But the story didn't become easy overnight. The first months were difficult. Elena struggled to believe she deserved the opportunity. She woke before sunrise, cleaned the studio obsessively, and sometimes sat for hours without touching a brush. She was terrified that if she failed, Adrian would realize his mistake and take everything away. Adrian noticed. He didn't pressure her. Instead, he gave her one rule. She could never again paint something because she thought someone else wanted it. She had to paint what she felt. So Elena began. She painted the city. Not the glamorous city shown in advertisements. The real city. The tired nurses. The delivery workers. The old shopkeepers. The children waiting outside schools. The lonely people eating dinner alone. The parents counting money before buying groceries. She painted the people nobody noticed. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. People began noticing her. A small local gallery invited her to display 6 paintings. Then another gallery called. Then an art critic wrote about the mysterious painter whose work made ordinary people look extraordinary. Within months, Elena's paintings were selling for thousands of dollars. But she never forgot the sidewalk. She returned there every Friday evening. Not because she needed the money. Because she remembered who she had been. One winter evening, a teenage boy approached her old place on the sidewalk carrying a cardboard box filled with drawings. His clothes were worn, and his hands were trembling from the cold. He told Elena that he wanted to become an artist but didn't think anyone would ever care about his work. Elena looked at him. She remembered herself. She bought one of his drawings. Then she bought another. Then she asked him to come to her studio the following week. The boy eventually became the first student in a free art program Elena created for young people who couldn't afford formal training. Adrian quietly helped fund it. But Elena insisted that the program carry no family name, no corporate branding, and no photographs of wealthy donors. She wanted the students to know that the program existed because someone believed they deserved a chance. Years passed. The small street program grew into a community arts center. And one evening, Elena stood before a crowd at the opening of her first major exhibition. On the wall behind her hung the painting of the elderly man sitting alone with 2 cups of coffee. It was the first painting Adrian had ever bought. Someone asked why she had kept it for so many years. Elena looked at the painting and smiled. Because, she explained, she had once believed the second cup represented someone who never came. Now she understood it differently. Sometimes the second cup represented hope. Hope that someone would eventually sit beside you. Hope that your life could change. Hope that the world might still surprise you. And sometimes, hope arrives in the form of a stranger stepping out of a black car on the coldest night of your life. But there was something Elena never told Adrian. The night before their first meeting, she had nearly stopped painting forever. She had packed her brushes into a box and decided she would find another job. She believed her dream was over. Then Adrian arrived. Years later, she gave him a small painting. It showed a woman sitting alone on a sidewalk beneath a gray sky. Beside her were dozens of paintings. And in the distance, almost hidden among the buildings, was a small black car. Adrian looked at it for a long time. Elena told him that she wanted him to have it. He asked why. She said because without that car, she might never have believed her life could change. Adrian smiled and told her something she never forgot. He said the car wasn't what changed her life. Her talent had already been there. Her courage had already been there. Her strength had already been there. He had simply been lucky enough to notice. That sentence stayed with Elena forever. Because it taught her the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes people don't need someone to give them a new life. They need someone to see the life they are already capable of building. And sometimes kindness isn't about handing someone money. It is about opening a door and trusting them enough to walk through it. Years later, Elena became a successful artist, but she never moved far from the neighborhood where she had once sold paintings on the street. She could have bought a mansion. Instead, she bought the old building where her community arts center stood. Every weekend, children painted there. Some were shy. Some were angry. Some had stopped believing in themselves. Elena understood them all. Because once she had been one of them. And every time a young artist asked her if they were good enough, she gave the same answer. She told them that talent was only the beginning. What mattered was continuing when nobody was watching. Continuing when nobody believed. Continuing when the world told you that survival was more important than dreams. And above all, never allowing poverty to convince you that your gift had no value. If this story touched your heart, please don't just watch and scroll away. Like the video, share it with someone who may be struggling silently, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps these stories reach people who need a little hope, a little courage, or simply a reminder that their hardest chapter does not have to be their final one. And before we end, I have a special request for you. In the comments write, "Someone will notice my light." Write it for yourself, for someone you love, or for the person who feels forgotten today. Because sometimes a single sentence can remind someone that their story isn't over. Elena once believed she was just a woman sitting on a sidewalk trying to sell paintings for enough money to survive another day. But someone looked closer. And when he did, he didn't see a poor street artist. He saw an artist who had never been given the chance to become what she was capable of becoming. The world may overlook people every day. It may overlook their talent, their pain, their dreams, and their potential. But that doesn't mean those things aren't there. Sometimes greatness is hidden beneath worn clothes. Sometimes dreams are painted on cheap canvas. Sometimes the person struggling beside you is carrying something beautiful. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to stop, look closer, and say, "I see you." That night, Elena went back to the same sidewalk where everything had begun. The city was loud. Cars rushed past. People hurried home. She stood quietly beside the wall where she had once displayed her paintings. Then she looked up at the windows of the buildings around her. She smiled. She wasn't standing there because she had nowhere else to go. She was standing there because she wanted to remember. To remember the cold, the hunger, the rejection, the fear, and most importantly, the moment when someone stopped walking past her. Because she had finally learned that sometimes the miracle isn't being rescued. Sometimes the miracle is discovering that someone believed in you long enough